Before we dive in, what do you think is more important in a relationship? Being seen for who you are, or being loved for who someone wants you to be? Leave us a comment below. And please, like this video and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories. The Heart's True Calling, a CEO's Journey. Ethan Vance walked through the streets of London with the same expression he always wore: vacant. He had just left his 5th therapy session in 2 years, and, like the others, it had ended in nothing. The doctors spoke of depression, anxiety, 1,000 names for something he couldn't explain. He only knew that inside, he felt like a ghost walking among the living. At 32, Ethan had everything a man was supposed to have to be happy. His tech consulting firm gave him more money than he could spend. He lived in a flat in Mayfair that cost as much as a luxury car. He had friends, or at least people who called him to go out, but every morning he woke up with the same sensation, as if he were watching his life through a fogged-up window. That afternoon, after another failed session where he was asked, "And how does that make you feel?" For the 10th time, Ethan decided to walk. He had no destination. He just wanted to get away from the therapist's office and the questions he couldn't answer. His Italian shoes echoed against the pavement as he walked through the South Bank, a place he usually avoided because of the crowds and the noise. It was then that he saw the journalists. They were standing outside an office building with cameras and microphones, waiting. Ethan recognized one of them. It was the same one who had tried to interview him last week about his meteoric corporate ascent and his secret to success at such a young age. What they didn't know was that there was no secret. Just long days of working to avoid thinking, endless nights of watching TV to avoid dreaming, and an emptiness that grew no matter how much money flowed into his account. "Mr. Vance," the journalist shouted upon seeing him, "can we ask you a few questions about your new expansion strategy?" Ethan felt something akin to panic. He couldn't talk to anyone right now, not after leaving therapy feeling more lost than ever. Without thinking, he turned into the first door he found and went in. The Morning Glow Cafe was small and cozy, with dark wood tables and warm lights that contrasted with the gray London day. There were few people inside, a student with books scattered around, an elderly couple sharing a dessert, and a woman reading alone by the window. The place smelled of freshly brewed coffee and something sweet he couldn't identify. Ethan sat at a table in the back, waiting for the journalists to leave. He took a deep breath for the first time in hours. Here, no one knew him. No one knew about his company or his supposed success. He could be invisible, and he liked that. "What can I get you?" a soft voice asked. He looked up and saw a young woman, perhaps in her mid-20s, with her brown hair tied back in a messy ponytail. Her eyes were dark and had that quality of those who have seen more than they should have at their age. She wore the cafe's uniform, a white blouse and a navy blue apron. But there was something in the way she moved that gave her elegance even in those simple clothes. "A coffee is fine," Ethan said, though he didn't feel like drinking anything. "What kind do we have? Americano, cappuccino, latte? Which would you recommend?" She smiled just slightly. "A latte, then. With something to eat?" "No, thank you." The woman turned to the counter, and Ethan followed her with his gaze without knowing why. There was something different about her, something he couldn't define. She wasn't pretty in the obvious way that successful people expected. She was beautiful in a real way, without heavy makeup or designer clothes, beautiful like people who aren't pretending to be someone else. When she came back with the coffee, she also brought a small plate with a biscuit. "I didn't order this," Ethan said. "It's on the house. You look like you've had a difficult day." For some reason, that simple observation disarmed him. How could a stranger see in 5 minutes what he hadn't been able to explain in 5 years of therapy? "What's your name?" he asked, surprising himself. Serena Hayes." "Ethan," "A pleasure, Serena." "A pleasure, Ethan." Serena turned to attend to another customer, but at that moment, she tripped on the corner of a table. The glass of red wine she was carrying for the elderly couple crashed to the floor, splashing Ethan's white shirt. The cafe fell silent. Serena turned red as the wine, her hands trembling as she watched the stain spread across Ethan's expensive shirt. "Oh my God, I am so sorry," she murmured, desperately grabbing for napkins. "Your shirt looks so expensive, I don't know how I'm going to pay for it." Ethan looked at the stain. Any other day, he would have exploded. That shirt cost more than Serena probably earned in a month. But something in her expression of genuine terror, in the way she apologized without expecting anything in return, calmed him. "It's fine," he said, surprised at how calm his voice sounded. "It's just a thing." Serena looked at him as if he had spoken in another language. "Really? Really?" For the first time in years, Ethan had reacted like a normal human being. He hadn't screamed. He hadn't demanded compensation. He hadn't acted like the important man he was supposed to be. And for the first time in years, he felt something. He didn't know what, but it was something. Serena cleaned up what she could with napkins, her hands accidentally brushing his. Ethan felt a small electric shock he had never experienced before. "Thank you," she said, and there was a note of genuine relief in her voice. Ethan stayed there until the cafe closed, pretending to read emails on his phone. When he finally left, he walked the 15 blocks to his flat without noticing the distance. That night, for the first time in months, he didn't turn on the television. He sat in his expensive living room, looking out the window, thinking about a woman who had apologized for ruining his shirt, and how that had been the most real thing he had felt in years. A small act of kindness ignites a quiet revolution. What do you think will happen when Ethan returns to the cafe? Share your predictions in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the unfolding story. The next day, Ethan woke up feeling different. He couldn't explain what had changed, but for the first time in months, he didn't stay in bed postponing the moment of getting up. He showered, put on a new shirt, and as he shaved, he found himself thinking about the Morning Glow Cafe. During his 9 a.m. meeting with his management team, his mind wandered to Serena. He wondered if she had slept well, if she was still worried about the ruined shirt, if she remembered his name. When his partner asked him about third-quarter projections, Ethan had to ask him to repeat the question. "Are you all right?" Chris asked after the meeting. "You seem, I don't know, different." "I'm fine," Ethan replied, though he wasn't sure what that meant. At 12:30, he made an excuse to leave the office. He said he had a meeting with a potential client in the city center. It wasn't a complete lie. He had a meeting, but it wasn't about business. The Morning Glow Cafe was busier than the day before. Ethan felt nervous as he waited in line, like a teenager about to talk to a girl he liked. When it was his turn, Serena recognized him immediately. "Hello," she said with a small but genuine smile. "How's the shirt?" "It survived," Ethan replied, and he was surprised to make a joke. He didn't make jokes. "I'm glad to hear that. The same as yesterday?" "Yes, please." Serena prepared his latte with precise, elegant movements. Ethan watched her work, noticing small details. How she bit her bottom lip when she concentrated. How she hummed softly as she cleaned the machine. How she greeted every customer as if they were important. "Here you are," she said, placing the cup in front of him. "No wine this time." Ethan laughed. A real laugh. Not the social laugh he used in business meetings. "Thanks for the heads up." He sat at the same table from the day before and took out his laptop, pretending to work. In reality, he spent the next hour discreetly observing Serena as she attended to other customers. There was something hypnotic in the way she moved through the cafe, as if it were the place where she belonged. When the cafe emptied a little, Serena approached to clean the nearby tables. "Do you work from here often?" she asked, gesturing to his laptop. "No, not really, but I like the atmosphere." "What do you do?" "Tech consulting," Ethan said, and then added, "It's pretty boring." Serena laughed. "I doubt it's boring. It sounds important." "Important doesn't mean interesting." There was something about the way Ethan spoke that intrigued Serena. He didn't talk like the men in suits who occasionally came to the cafe, all full of rush and arrogance. He spoke like someone who was tired of pretending to care about things he was supposed to care about. "And what about you?" Ethan asked. "Did you always want to work in a cafe?" Serena's smile faded a little. "Not exactly, but there are worse places to land." There was something in her tone that suggested a longer story. But before Ethan could ask more, another customer arrived, and Serena had to go back to work. In the following days, Ethan established a routine. He would arrive at the cafe around 12:30, order a latte, sit at the same table, and pretend to work while he waited for moments when he could talk to Serena. They were short conversations, interrupted by other customers, but each one revealed something new. He learned that she was from Caracas, that she had arrived in London 2 years ago, that she studied something related to education at night. He learned that she read a lot, that she preferred tea to coffee even though she worked in a cafe, and that she had a way of listening that made people want to tell her their secrets. Serena, for her part, began to anticipate Ethan's arrival. There was something comforting about his silent presence. He wasn't like other customers who tried to flirt with her or who treated her as if she were invisible. He really saw her, and that had become rare in her life. At the end of the first week, Serena approached his table with a mischievous smile. "You know what I've noticed?" she said. "What?" "You never finish your latte and you always order the same thing, but you never seem to actually enjoy it." Ethan felt exposed. She was right. He wasn't coming for the coffee. "Maybe I'm not very good at pretending I like coffee," he admitted. "Then why do you come?" The question hung in the air between them. Ethan looked her in the eyes, those dark eyes that seemed to see more than they should, and for the first time in years, he decided to tell the truth. "Because here, I don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not." Serena was silent for a moment, as if processing his words. "I understand," she finally said. "Me neither." And in that moment, something shifted between them. It wasn't love yet. It was something more subtle, but just as powerful. It was recognition. Two people who had been pretending for so long that they had forgotten who they really were, finding each other in a small cafe in the center of London. For the first time he could remember, Ethan had a reason to get up in the mornings. What do you think of this quiet, unexpected connection? Has a small moment with a stranger ever changed your perspective on your own life? Tell us in the comments below. 2 weeks after their first honest conversation, Ethan had turned the Morning Glow Cafe into his unofficial second office. His laptop was filled with unreviewed documents and unanswered emails. Projects had lost their urgency. His real job now was to decipher Serena Hayes. He had learned that she always arrived 15 minutes before her shift, that she greeted every colleague by name, and that she had a particular way of cleaning tables. Always in circles, always with the same meticulousness. He had also noticed that some days she arrived with swollen eyes, as if she had been crying, but she never let it affect how she treated customers. That Tuesday, the cafe was especially quiet. Only 3 customers remained besides Ethan, and Serena approached his table with 2 cups of tea. "You look like you need something stronger than coffee," she said, placing a cup in front of him. "Is it that obvious?" "Quite. You've been wearing the same wrinkled shirt for 3 days, and today you're wearing mismatched shoes." Ethan looked down and realized she was right. 1 black shoe, 1 brown. He laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "My business partner says I'm losing my mind," he admitted. And what do you think? That maybe I lost it a long time ago, and I'm only just realizing it. Serena sat down opposite him, something she had never done during work hours. Her eyes had that quality of understanding he had noticed from the first day. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course. Why are you so sad? You have a job, money, success. From the outside, it looks like you have everything." Ethan had expected that question for days, but now that it came, he didn't know how to answer without sounding like a spoiled rich kid. "Because having everything doesn't mean feeling anything," he said finally. "It's like I'm living someone else's life, a life that's supposed to make me happy, but I don't understand it." Serena nodded slowly. "I understand more than you think." "You do?" Serena looked out the window, as if deciding how much to share. When she spoke, her voice was softer than usual. "I've lived lives that weren't mine too," she said. "In Caracas, I was a primary school teacher. I had my flat, my students, my routine. I thought that was all I needed. What happened? My mom got sick. Pancreatic cancer. The medicine she needed cost more than I earned in 6 months. I sold everything I had, took out loans, worked double shifts, but it wasn't enough." Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. He didn't know what to say. "She died on a Tuesday morning," Serena continued. "I was in the hospital holding her hand, and the last thing she told me was, 'My child, promise me you'll live your life, not mine.'" "And that's why you came to London?" "Yes and no. I came because I couldn't stay there. Everything reminded me of her, and not in a good way. It reminded me that I had failed, that I couldn't save her. But I also came because I understood something. I had lived the life she wanted for me, not the life I wanted for myself." Serena took a sip of tea and continued. "The first few months here were awful. I arrived knowing no one, with no job, sleeping in cheap hostels. I had panic attacks so severe that I ended up in A&E 3 times. The doctors gave me pills, but what really saved me was realizing something." "What?" "That running away is more tiring than taking a risk." Those words resonated in Ethan's mind like a bell. Running away is more tiring than taking a risk. He had been running away his whole life, from his parents' expectations, from his own feelings, from the possibility of failing, from the possibility of being vulnerable. "And now?" he asked. "Do you feel like you're living your life?" Serena smiled, but it was a complicated smile. "I'm learning. I work in a cafe, but I study psychology at night, not because someone told me to, but because I want to help people like me, like my mom, like you. People who feel lost in their own lives. People who are afraid to feel because feeling hurts. People who are so busy being what others expect that they forget who they really are." Ethan fell silent. Serena had just described the last 10 years of his life with a precision that scared him. "And what happens if you don't know who you really are?" he asked. "Then you start to discover it, little by little, without rushing." A customer approached to pay, and Serena had to get up to serve them. But before she left, she placed her hand on Ethan's for a second. "Thank you for asking me," she said. "It's been a long time since I talked about my mom with anyone." When Serena left, Ethan remained staring at the spot where her hand had been. He could still feel the warmth of her skin, the softness of her fingers, but more than that, he could feel something waking up inside him. The need to know her more, to understand her story, to be part of her process of self-discovery. For the first time in years, Ethan wanted to take a risk instead of run away. That night, he walked to his flat, thinking about Serena's words. Running away is more tiring than taking a risk. He wondered what would happen if he stopped running from himself, if he risked feeling, if he allowed himself to be vulnerable with someone who understood what it was like to live a borrowed life. He wondered if he was capable of doing it. A painful truth and a new desire for vulnerability. What do you think Ethan's next move will be? Will he finally choose authenticity over the life he was expected to live? Share your insights and subscribe for the next chapter. On Friday of the third week, Ethan didn't show up at the cafe. Serena noticed immediately, at 1:30. As she prepared a cappuccino for another customer, her eyes automatically searched for the table in the back. It was empty. At 2, when Ethan would normally be settled in with his laptop pretending to work, she kept looking at the door. At 3, she was genuinely worried. It was strange how much she had come to depend on his silent presence. In the last few weeks, Ethan had become a comforting constant in her day. She knew that at 12:30, she could count on a real conversation, on someone who truly listened to her, on someone who didn't judge her for being a waitress when she had once been a teacher. Meanwhile, Ethan was in his flat, feeling as if he had been hit by a truck. He had woken up with a fever, a headache, and a dizzy feeling that kept him from getting out of bed. His body, which had endured years of stress and sleepless nights, had finally given in. He spent the day drifting in and out of sleep, drenched in sweat, alternating between chills and waves of heat. His phone rang several times with calls from the office, but he didn't have the energy to answer. For the first time in years, the world kept turning without him, and he realized that he didn't care. What he did care about, in a way that surprised him, was that Serena might think he had abandoned her. During one of his moments of lucidity, he grabbed his phone and sent a message to the cafe. He had never done anything like it before, but he was too sick to think about normal social rules. "Hi, it's Ethan. I'm sick. Won't be able to make it to the cafe today. Hope you have a good day." He sent the message before he could regret it. Serena received the message at 4 in the afternoon, as her shift was ending. She read the words twice, feeling a mixture of relief and concern. Relief because he hadn't forgotten her. Concern because something in the tone of the message alerted her. He sounded very ill, and she knew what it was like to be sick and alone in a city where no one really knows you. She stood in the cafe kitchen, debating with herself. Was it appropriate to worry so much about a customer? About a man she had only known for 3 weeks? But then she remembered all their conversations, the way he listened to her, how he had reacted when she spilled wine on his shirt. She remembered what she had learned from her mum, that caring for others wasn't weakness, it was humanity. Before leaving the cafe, she prepared a chicken soup to go and bought chamomile tea at the chemist on the corner. Finding Ethan's address wasn't difficult. He had mentioned the building he lived in during one of their conversations, and Google gave her the rest of the information. An hour later, she was standing in front of a luxurious building in Knightsbridge, feeling completely out of place in her work clothes. The doorman looked at her with suspicion until she explained that she was bringing medicine for Mr. Vance. After a brief call, he let her go up. When Ethan opened the door to his flat, Serena was startled. He was pale, with deep, dark circles under his eyes, and he was leaning on the doorframe as if it were the only thing holding him up. His hair was a mess, and he wore a wrinkled t-shirt that smelled of sick sweat. "Serena?" he said, as if he couldn't believe she was there. "What? How?" "I got your message," she said. "You look terrible." "I feel terrible. Can I come in?" "I brought soup." Ethan stepped aside, too sick to question the strangeness of the situation. His flat was exactly what Serena had imagined. Minimalist, expensive, cold. Everything was white, black, or gray. There were no photos, no plants, nothing to suggest that anyone really lived there. "When was the last time you ate?" Serena asked, guiding him to the sofa. "I don't remember. Yesterday, maybe? Have you taken anything for the fever?" "I think so, or maybe not." Serena sighed and went to the kitchen. It was as impersonal as the rest of the flat. Expensive appliances. Obviously little used, a nearly empty fridge, no medicine anywhere. For the next hour, Serena became a nurse. She gave him fever medication, forced him to eat the soup by small spoonfuls, and made him chamomile tea. Ethan let her, too weak to protest. "Why?" he asked as she placed a cool towel on his forehead. "Why what? Why did you come? I'm nothing to you." Serena was silent for a moment, organizing the medications on the coffee table. "Because I know what it's like to be sick and alone," she said finally. "And why? Because you're nothing to me. But you're also not just anyone." "I don't understand." "Me neither, completely." Ethan closed his eyes, feeling the relief of the medicine starting to take effect. But more than the physical relief, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Real care. Not the professional care of a doctor or the mandatory concern of an employee, but the genuine care of someone who had chosen to be there. When he opened his eyes, Serena was sitting on the sofa beside him, reading a book she had taken from her bag. "You don't have to stay," he murmured. "I know. Then why?" "Because I don't want you to be alone." And right there, in that moment, something inside Ethan broke. Maybe it was the fever. Maybe it was the vulnerability of being sick. Or maybe it was simply that for the first time in decades, someone had chosen to care for him without expecting anything in return. He began to cry. They weren't silent, dignified tears. They were deep, uncontrolled sobs, years of loneliness and emptiness pouring out of his body like water from a broken dam. He cried for his mom, who had died without him knowing how to tell her he loved her. He cried for his dad, who had never been proud of him. He cried for all the years he had spent pretending to be happy when he felt dead inside. Serena didn't say a word. She didn't offer him easy explanations or try to console him with empty words. She just moved closer to the sofa and sat beside him, placing a gentle hand on his back, while he wept. When he finally stopped, he felt exhausted, but also strangely clean, as if he had released something he had been carrying for years. "Thank you," he whispered. "You're welcome," Serena replied, and continued to sit beside him until he fell asleep. A CEO's cold exterior shatters, revealing a profound vulnerability. Will this moment of shared honesty change everything for Ethan and Serena? What do you think happens next? Share your predictions and subscribe for the next chapter. The next 2 weeks were different. After that afternoon in his flat, something had changed between Ethan and Serena. It wasn't just that he had cried in front of her, but that he had allowed her to take care of him without trying to maintain his image as a successful man. For the first time, he had been completely vulnerable with someone. Ethan continued to go to the cafe every day, but now their conversations were deeper. Serena told him about her nighttime psychology classes, about the books she was reading, about her plans to write a thesis on migratory trauma. He told her about his company, but also about how he had built his life around work to avoid thinking about anything else. One Thursday afternoon, as Serena cleaned almost empty tables, she approached Ethan with a serious expression. "I have something to tell you," she said, sitting down across from him. Ethan closed his laptop. In the last few weeks, he had learned to recognize when Serena had something important to say. "What is it?" "I received a job offer in Dublin." The words hit Ethan like a punch to the stomach. He remained silent, processing what he had just heard. "What kind of offer?" "An NGO that works with refugees and migrants. They're looking for someone who can teach literacy and provide basic psychological support. It's exactly what I've been studying." Ethan felt pure panic rush through his veins. The idea of Serena leaving, of returning to his empty days without the conversations that had become the center of his existence, was unbearable. "When?" he asked, trying to sound calm. "I have to give an answer in a week. If I accept, I would start next month." "And what are you going to do?" Serena sighed. "I don't know. It's an incredible opportunity. I could help people who are going through what I went through. But it also means starting over again, in another country, without knowing anyone. Ethan felt he had to say something, do something, so she wouldn't leave. But instead of speaking from the heart, his analytical mind took control. "Have you thought about the practical aspects?" he said. "Ireland is going through an economic crisis. The security situation isn't great, and NGOs aren't financially stable. What if they close the program in 6 months?" Serena frowned. "Those are risks, yes, but—" "And besides," Ethan continued, "you already have an established life here. Your job, your studies, your friends. Is it worth throwing everything away for something uncertain?" "They're not just friends, Ethan. You know that." There was something in her tone that made Ethan stop. Serena was looking at him with an expression he had never seen before. Disappointment. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I was hoping you'd give me a real reason to stay, not a list of pros and cons, as if this were a business decision. I'm just being realistic." "No," Serena interrupted him. "You're being cowardly." The word cowardly hit Ethan like a slap. No one had ever spoken to him like that. In his world, he was the one who made important decisions, the one who gave advice, the one who was in control. Cowardly? Yes, because what you really want to tell me is not to leave, because you need me. Because these days, coming to the cafe are the only moments you feel alive, because for the first time in years, you found someone you can be real with. But instead of saying that, you give me logical arguments. Ethan felt exposed, as if Serena had seen directly into his soul. "That's not it." "Not what?" "It's not true." Serena's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained firm. "Ethan, I've been waiting for 3 weeks for you to tell me how you really feel, to tell me if this thing between us means something to you. But every time we get close to something real, you hide behind logic." "I don't hide." "Yes, you do. You hide behind your work, behind your money, behind your rational analysis of everything. But feelings aren't rational, Ethan, and life's big decisions aren't made with just your head." Serena got up from the table, clearly frustrated. "You know what? I want someone who asks me to stay with their heart, not with their head. I want someone who is capable of saying, 'I need you,' without disguising it as practical advice." "Serena, wait." But she had already walked away to serve another customer. Ethan remained seated, feeling as if the world had moved from beneath his feet. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Serena's words echoed in his head over and over. "Cowardly. You hide. I want someone who asks me to stay with their heart." He got up and began to pace his flat, trying to understand what had happened. He had tried to help her, to give her good advice, to be rational. So why was that wrong? But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that Serena was right. He had used logic as a mask to hide his terror that she would leave. He had tried to manipulate her decision without admitting that he needed her. For the first time in his life, Ethan faced a truth he had been avoiding. He was afraid of his own feelings, afraid to admit that Serena had become important to him, afraid of being vulnerable, afraid that if he opened up completely, she could hurt him. But by trying to protect himself, he had hurt the only person who truly understood him. At 3 a.m, he made a decision that scared him more than any business deal he had ever made. He was going to seek real professional help, not to please others or to find a quick solution, but because he wanted to understand why he was so afraid to feel. He wanted to be the kind of man who could say, "I need you," without hiding behind logical arguments. He wanted to be the kind of man who deserved someone like Serena. A painful truth revealed. Do you believe Ethan can overcome his fear and become the man Serena needs him to be? What do you think she will do? Share your insights and subscribe for the breathtaking culmination. Ethan didn't go to the cafe for 4 days, not because he didn't want to see Serena, but because he knew that if he showed up without having truly changed, he would only make things worse. Instead, he did something he had never done seriously before. He sought help. On Monday morning, he called 3 different therapists until he found one who could see him that same week. On Tuesday, he had his first real therapy session, where for the first time he didn't try to impress the doctor or minimize his problems. He talked about Serena, about the cafe, about how he had used logic to hide his fear. "Have you heard of avoidant personality disorder?" the therapist asked, after listening to him for an hour. "No. It's when a person avoids close relationships for fear of rejection or criticism. They tend to hide behind work, logic, anything that protects them from being vulnerable." Ethan fell silent. It was as if someone had named everything he had felt for years. Can it be fixed? It doesn't get fixed. You work at it. It requires time, and above all, it requires you to be willing to feel the things you've been avoiding. The next few days were the most difficult of Ethan's life. In therapy, he began to talk about things he had never verbalized. His fear of abandonment, his need for control, the way he had built an identity entirely based on external achievements because he didn't know who he was inside. On Thursday, he found out by chance that Serena had accepted the job in Dublin. One of the cafe's waitresses mentioned it to him when he went to pick up a book he had left behind. "It's a shame," the girl said. "Serena is the best employee we've ever had, but she seems excited about her new opportunity." Ethan felt as if the air had been knocked out of him. He had run out of time. On Friday morning, early, he went to the cafe before it opened to the public. He knew Serena arrived 15 minutes before her shift to prepare everything. He found her organizing the cups, humming softly as she always did when she thought no one was listening. "Hello," he said from the door. Serena turned, surprised. "Ethan, I haven't seen you in days. I needed to sort some things out with myself before coming to talk to you." Serena put the cups away and turned to face him completely. There was something different about him. He looked more tired, but also more present, as if he was finally inhabiting his own body. "They told me you accepted the job," Ethan said. "Yes. When do you leave?" "Next Monday." They only had 3 days. Ethan felt panic, but this time he didn't try to suppress it or rationalize it. He felt it completely. "Serena," he said, and his voice broke a little. "I don't want you to go. You already told me that, with very convincing arguments. No, not this time. This time, I'm telling you without arguments, without logic, without trying to convince you of anything." Ethan took a deep breath. "I don't want you to go because I need you. Because these last few days without seeing you have been the worst I've had in months. Because I don't know how to be whole, but I know that with you, I'm learning." Serena was silent, but her eyes filled with tears. "I know I have no right to ask you to change your plans for me," Ethan continued. "I know it's an incredible opportunity, and that you have every right to take it. But I also know that if I don't tell you this now, I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life." "And what exactly are you telling me?" Ethan took a step closer. "I'm telling you that I love you, that I didn't know what that was until I met you. I'm telling you that I've been in therapy all week, trying to understand why I'm so afraid to feel. I'm telling you that I want to try to be the person you deserve, even if it scares me, and even if I don't know if I can." Serena's tears finally fell. "Ethan, what if I still decide to go? I'll understand. But I wanted you to know that someone loves you enough to ask you to stay without hiding behind excuses." Serena wiped her tears with the back of her hand. When she spoke, her voice was soft but firm. "You know what? I considered turning down the job. From the very first day, even before our fight, I considered staying." "Why didn't you?" "Because I needed to know if you were capable of not running away. I needed to know if, when things got difficult, When you had to choose between protecting yourself and taking a risk for us, you would choose to take the risk. Ethan felt hope mixing with fear in his chest. And now, Serena moved closer to him until they were face to face. Now I know you are. They hugged there, in the empty cafe, between the smell of freshly brewed coffee and the golden light of the London morning. It wasn't the hug of two people saving each other, but the hug of two people who had decided to choose each other, with all their fears. "So you're staying?" Ethan asked, his face buried in her hair. "I'm staying," Serena murmured against his chest. "But not because you convinced me. I'm staying because I want to see what we are capable of building together." For the first time in his life, someone had chosen to stay not for his logical arguments, but despite all his fears. The first real bond in his life had just begun, a powerful declaration of love and a courageous choice. What do you think the future holds for Ethan and Serena as they build a new life together? Share your hopes for this authentic couple in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the beautiful culmination. 6 months later, Ethan and Serena had learned that real love isn't like in the movies. There was no background music when they argued about who had left the dirty dishes. No slow motion when Serena arrived tired from her night classes and just wanted silence. But there was something better than perfect moments. There was honesty. Ethan continued to go to therapy every Wednesday. Some weeks he left feeling better. Others he left confused and frustrated. His therapist had explained that healing wasn't a straight line upward, but more like climbing a mountain with many curves. There were days when he felt like he had advanced for miles, and others when he seemed to have gone back to the starting point. Serena had definitively turned down the job in Dublin, but she hadn't stayed the same. She had negotiated with the cafe owner to work part-time and dedicate her afternoons to studying. She had also started teaching Spanish to migrants on weekends, something that filled her with energy in a way the cafe job never had. "It's strange," she told Ethan one afternoon while they were making dinner in his flat. "Before, I thought I had to choose between staying and following my dreams, but it turns out I could do both. Don't you miss the opportunity in Dublin?" "Sometimes, but I've learned that opportunities aren't a one-time thing. Others might come, maybe better, maybe different. What's unique is this," she said, gesturing to the space between them. Not everything had been easy. Ethan had had several crises during those months. One night, after an argument about something as simple as where to spend the weekend, he had panicked and told Serena that maybe he wasn't capable of being in a real relationship. "It's so difficult," he had said, pacing the living room like a caged animal. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be with someone without ruining it." Serena had let him pace, waiting for him to calm down. When he finally sat down, exhausted by his own anxiety, she had moved closer. "Do you know what I've learned?" she had said. "That love isn't about knowing how to do things perfectly. It's about being willing to learn them together, even when it's hard." That night, for the first time, Ethan had slept at Serena's place. Not because it was a grand romantic declaration, but because he had been honest about his fear, and she had chosen to stay by his side anyway. Serena had also had her difficult moments. One night she had cried for 2 hours after talking on the phone with a cousin in Caracas who told her about the increasingly dire situation in Venezuela. She felt guilty for having found stability while her family was still suffering. "Sometimes I feel like I don't have the right to be happy when they're starving," she had confessed through tears. Ethan, who months earlier would have tried to solve the problem with logical solutions, had simply hugged her. They had spent the night awake, talking about survivor's guilt and how you can honor the people you love without sacrificing your own happiness. The next day, they had opened a joint savings account to send money regularly to Serena's family. It wasn't a perfect solution, But it was something real and concrete they could do together. Over time, they had developed small but important rituals. On Sunday mornings, they had breakfast at the cafe where they met, sitting at the same table where Serena had spilled wine on Ethan's shirt. On Wednesdays, after therapy, Ethan would meet Serena at the university where she took classes, and they would walk home together, talking about what each had learned that day. On Saturday nights, they cooked together, experimenting with Venezuelan recipes Serena remembered from her childhood and British dishes neither of them knew how to prepare well. The kitchen always ended up a mess, but they had gotten used to cleaning it together while arguing about politics, books, or plans for the future. Ethan had also started to change his relationship with work. He sold 30% of his company to his partner and hired a general manager to handle daily operations. With the free time and money from the sale, he had started something completely new, a small publishing house focused on books about mental health and emotional well-being. "Why books?" Serena had asked him when he told her the idea. "Because for years I looked for help and didn't know where to find it. Maybe if I had had the right books when I was 20, I wouldn't have spent a decade feeling lost." The publishing house was small, not very profitable, but it was the first time in his life that Ethan had worked on something he genuinely cared about. They had published 3 books so far, one on anxiety in young professionals, another on migratory grief, and one on relationships after 30. One afternoon, while reviewing the printing proofs for the 4th book, Serena had placed her hand on his. "Do you realize what we've done?" she had said. "What?" "We built a life, a real life, with real problems and real joys, without pretending, without hiding." Ethan had looked around his improvised office in the flat. Papers everywhere, 2 half-empty coffee cups, the cat Serena had adopted sleeping on a manuscript. It was a beautiful mess, very different from the cold perfection he had had before. "Yes," he had said, "and I like it." That night, as they fell asleep, Ethan had realized something. For the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of the future. Not because it was going to be easy, but because he knew he wasn't going to face it alone. A relationship built on honesty, not illusions. What do you predict for Ethan and Serena's future? What's the best definition of true love? Share your thoughts and subscribe for the final, heartwarming chapter. December arrived in London with that particular melancholy of the year's end. Ethan and Serena had been together for 10 months. 10 months of learning that everyday love was harder and more beautiful than anything they had imagined. The Morning Glow Cafe had decided to hold a small, end-of-year celebration for its regular customers. Nothing elegant, just an informal gathering with soft music, cheap wine, and the same biscuits they served every day. Serena had insisted they go, even though Ethan felt nervous about the idea of being at a social event where people would know that he was Serena's boyfriend, the waitress. "You're not great with crowds, are you?" Serena had asked him while getting ready for the party. "It's not that. It's just, I don't know how to present myself in your world." "My world?" "The world where you're Serena, the psychology student, the one who helps migrants, the one who has real friends, not the world where I'm Ethan, the businessman." Serena had turned from the mirror where she was styling her hair. "You know what your problem is." "What?" "You still think we have separate worlds. But for months we've been living in the same world, Ethan. The world we built together." The party turned out to be exactly what Ethan had both feared and hoped for. There were about 30 people in the cafe. Serena's university classmates, some work colleagues, neighborhood residents, and regulars like him. At first, he felt out of place, but he gradually relaxed as he saw how Serena naturally included him in conversations. "This is Ethan," she told one of her classmates. "He's the one who helps me with the books for my research. He has a publishing house." Not, "He's a businessman," Or, he has a lot of money. He just has a publishing house. And he helps me with the books. As if his value lay in what he did for others, not in what he owned. After an hour, the cafe owner asked for everyone's attention to make a New Year's toast. He was an older man, with a gray beard and kind eyes, who had seen hundreds of people looking for a place to belong pass through his cafe. "I want to thank everyone for making this place special," he said, raising his glass of cheap red wine. "A cafe isn't just a place where you sell coffee. It's a place where stories are created, where friendships are formed, where people find what they didn't know they were looking for." Several people nodded, smiling. Ethan looked around and realized he knew some of those stories. The medical student who came to study here because his flat was too noisy. The elderly lady who came every Tuesday because it was the only day she left her house. The two artists who had met at the table by the window. "Before we finish," the owner continued, "I'd like to ask someone to say a few words. Someone who found much more than a good latte in this cafe." To Ethan's surprise, several people turned to look at him. Serena squeezed his hand and whispered, "He knows our story. Everyone knows." "Ethan," the owner said, "would you like to say something?" Ethan felt paralyzed. Public speaking was part of his job, but this was different. This was personal. He looked at Serena, who smiled at him with that smile he had learned to recognize, the one that said, "I trust you," without words. He slowly stood up, feeling all eyes on him. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Then he remembered something his therapist had told him. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's where courage, creativity, and change are born. "I'm not very good at talking about feelings in public," he began, and several people chuckled softly. "But I think I have to thank this place for saving my life." A silence fell. Ethan continued, surprised at how calm he felt. "A year ago, I was a very lost person. I had everything that's supposed to make someone happy, but I didn't know who I really was. I came here by chance, running away from something, and I found someone who taught me that it's okay not to have all the answers, that it's okay to be scared, that it's okay to need help." He looked at Serena, who had tears in her eyes, but was smiling. "I learned that real love isn't finding someone perfect, but finding someone with whom you can be imperfect without having to pretend. I learned that there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. And I learned that sometimes the best things in life start when someone spills wine on your shirt." Everyone laughed, including Serena, who wiped her tears away. "So thank you," Ethan finished, "for being the place where I never had to pretend to be someone I'm not." The applause was warm and genuine, but what mattered most to Ethan was the expression on Serena's face. Pure pride and real love. When he sat down, she whispered, "You know that was your first completely honest speech? How do you know that? Because you didn't mention your company, your money, or your achievements even once. You only talked about what really matters." Later that night, as they walked home through the illuminated streets of London, Ethan stopped in front of a jeweler's that was still open. "Wait here for a moment," he told Serena. "What are you going to do?" "Something I should have done months ago." He went into the shop and came out 5 minutes later with a small bag. He knelt right there, in the street, with people passing by. "Serena Hayes," he said, pulling out a simple silver wedding band. "I'm not asking you to marry me because we have everything sorted out. I'm asking you because I want to sort out everything that comes with you." Serena covered her mouth with her hands, between tears and laughter. "Is that your official proposal?" "My official proposal is, you stayed when I was learning not to run. Now I want to stay too, forever." "Yes," Serena said, and she knelt down to his level to kiss him. "Of course, yes." They hugged right there in the middle of the street, while people applauded around them. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't like in the movies, but it was completely real. And that was exactly what both of them had been looking for without knowing it. February 2023. The Morning Glow Cafe had never been so full on a Saturday morning. The tables had been moved to create a small central aisle, decorated with simple flowers and warm lights that the owner had specially hung for the occasion. It wasn't elegant by traditional standards, but it had something no expensive venue could offer: real history. Ethan stood by the counter where Serena had worked for 2 years, nervously adjusting his tie. He wore a simple, dark gray suit, nothing ostentatious. Beside him was Chris, his business partner and best man, who couldn't hide his surprise when Ethan had told him he wanted to get married in a cafe in the city center instead of some 5-star hotel. "Are you sure about this?" Chris had asked weeks ago. "I mean, you can afford any place in the city." "Precisely," Ethan had replied, "because I can afford any place, but this is the only place that means something." The guests were not many. Some of their work colleagues, the friends Serena had made at university, his therapist, who had turned out to be more important in his life than many relatives, and some of the cafe regulars who had become part of their story. Ethan's family had come from Manchester, still a bit confused by the choice of venue, but making a genuine effort to understand this new Ethan, who had emerged in the last year. Serena's family couldn't travel from Caracas, but they had set up a video call projected on a laptop on one of the tables. Her cousin, Anna, was crying from Caracas, telling Serena she looked beautiful and that her mum would be proud. Serena appeared from the cafe's small office, which they had used as a makeshift dressing room. She wasn't wearing a traditional wedding dress, but a simple white gown she had bought at a neighborhood shop, with small hand-embroidered flowers. Her hair was in a loose bun, with a few strands framing her face. She looked exactly like what she was, herself, but in her best version. When Ethan saw her walk towards him between the tables where they had shared hundreds of conversations, he felt his chest fill with something he couldn't name. It wasn't just love, though that was there. It was gratitude. Gratitude for having found someone with whom he could be completely real. The officiant was an older man who had agreed to come to the cafe after Serena explained that it was the place where they had met. There was something poetic about making their union official in the same place where they had started as strangers. "Ethan and Serena have decided to write their own vows," the officiant announced when Serena reached his side. Ethan took a deep breath and pulled a small card from his pocket. He had rewritten it 5 times until it sounded exactly as he wanted. "Serena," he began, and he was surprised at how calm his voice sounded. "A year and a half ago, I was a man who was afraid of his own feelings. I had built my life around avoiding anything that would make me vulnerable. Then you spilled wine on my shirt, and for the first time in years, I reacted like a normal human being." Several people laughed softly, including Serena. "You taught me that real love isn't about finding someone who completes your broken parts, but finding someone with whom you can work to heal those parts. You taught me that it's okay to be scared, as long as you don't let fear make the big decisions. And I promise you that I will never again hide my feelings behind logical arguments." He paused for a moment, looking directly into her eyes. "But above all, I promise we will continue to build a real life together, with real problems, real joys, and real conversations in this cafe where it all began." Serena wiped her tears with the back of her hand before speaking. "Ethan," she said, without needing notes. "When I came to London, I was running from my pain. I thought that if I got far enough, I could leave behind everything that hurt me. But you taught me that it's not about running from pain, but about finding someone with whom it's safe to feel it." Her voice broke a little, but she continued. "You taught me that love isn't drama or uncontrolled passion. It's choosing to stay when the other person is learning to be better. It's having patience with the healing process. It's building something solid and real, day by day. I promise I will continue to grow with you, not for you. I promise that I will be honest about my own fears and traumas, because I know we will face them together." The officiant declared that they could kiss, and when they did, the entire cafe erupted in applause. But what Ethan would remember forever was not the noise, but the perfect silence he felt in his mind for the first time in decades. After the ceremony, while everyone ate the simple cake they had ordered from the corner bakery, Ethan and Serena sat at their usual table, the same table where she had spilled wine, where they had had their first real conversation, where he had learned to be vulnerable. "How do you feel?" Serena asked him. "Like I'm home," Ethan replied. "For the first time in my life, like I'm home." Serena put her hand over his, and the simple silver ring shone under the cafe's warm lights. "You know what the best part of all this is?" she said. "What?" "That we didn't have to change who we are to be together. We just had to have the courage to be who we really are." Ethan looked around the cafe, at their friends and family celebrating, at the regular customers who had decided to stay for the impromptu party, at the place where he had learned that it was possible to love and be loved without masks. "You're right," he said. "This is the place where we never had to pretend." And as the February sun streamed through the Morning Glow Cafe's windows, Ethan Vance and Serena Hayes officially began the life they had been building since the day they met. A real, imperfect, and completely honest life. A life where love wasn't a fantasy, but a daily choice to stay and grow together. Did you identify with Ethan and Serena's story? This beautiful love story reminds us that sometimes the deepest connections are born in the most unexpected places, like a small cafe in the center of London. If this story touched your heart, if it made you reflect on real love, the kind that requires vulnerability and courage to be authentic, give us a like and share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's okay not to have all the answers, that it's okay to ask for help, and that true love is choosing to stay even when it's difficult. We'd love to know where you're watching us from. Comment what country you're from and tell us what part of the story you liked the most. Was it the moment Serena spilled the wine? The conversation about running versus risking? Or maybe the proposal in the middle of the street? If you liked this story and want more content about authentic relationships, personal growth, and inspiring stories, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to not miss our next stories. Your support helps us continue creating content that reaches the heart.